Game is different. Like I want people to understand and our fans to understand that playing 82 games in the 80s and 90s is not the same as playing 82 games in the 2020s.
According to insiders who were present, Shaq was already waiting in the tunnel before the game had even ended, standing like a massive wall in front of the locker room door. When the Lakers came through, he asked a single question that made the entire team stop in their tracks. By then, general manager Rob Pelinka was reportedly nervous and trying to keep the two superstars apart. LeBron soon realized that his recent podcast clips had not only gone viral, but had also angered one of the few figures powerful enough to challenge his legacy. Witnesses said Shaq delivered a line that silenced LeBron's entire group, fueling speculation among commentators that this confrontation could mark a turning point. The night itself had already gone badly. On February 1st, 2026, the Lakers suffered a decisive 112-100 loss at Madison Square Garden, a game that felt out of reach from start to finish. Opposing players scored with ease. Luka Doncic put up 30 points, and although LeBron finished with 22, observers felt he showed his age. After the final buzzer, as LeBron walked through the tunnel, he encountered Shaq leaning against the wall, clearly not in a joking mood. Described as an intimidating presence, Shaq locked eyes with him and challenged the idea that today's game is harder, arguing that modern rules make physical defense nearly impossible. LeBron attempted to respond by pointing to the speed and evolution of the modern game, but Shaq dismissed the explanation, insisting that speed means little when defenders cannot make contact. He also criticized today's stars for missing games due to injuries, contrasting that with earlier eras when players were expected to endure far more physical punishment. The exchange reportedly grew so heated that staff members stepped in to separate them. Supporters of Shaq's perspective argue that he represents a generation that experienced the NBA's most physical periods, having entered the league in 1992 and played through major rule changes such as the elimination of hand-checking in 2004 and the expansion of flagrant foul protections. To him, claims that the modern game is tougher can sound dismissive of past legends who battled through
less physical, and he's always done this his whole career. He never really done that. So, but the fact that it's less physical, I think it definitely helped.
He argued that the criticism was justified, saying that if LeBron James had to endure commercial flights in cramped seats and absorb punishing hits from enforcers like Rick Mahorn night after night, he likely would not still be playing at age 41. This perspective gained even more attention when Michael Jordan spoke publicly in June 2025. Jordan did not merely question the competitive fire of modern stars. He also criticized the widespread use of load management, suggesting that it allows players to rest strategically rather than compete through fatigue and minor injuries as earlier generations did. He expressed nostalgia for an era when the league's biggest names were expected to play almost every game and carry heavy physical burdens without the extensive recovery resources available today. To Jordan and others who share this view, the modern approach reflects a shift away from the
competition. That type of competitiveness is what I live for, and I miss it. I miss that aspect of playing the game.
He argued that the criticism was justified, saying that if LeBron James had to endure commercial flights in cramped seats and absorb punishing hits from enforcers like Rick Mahorn night after night, he likely would not still be playing at age 41. This perspective gained even more attention when Michael Jordan spoke publicly in June 2025. Jordan did not merely question the competitive fire of modern stars. He also criticized the widespread use of load management, suggesting that it allows players to rest strategically rather than compete through fatigue and minor injuries as earlier generations did. He expressed nostalgia for an era when the league's biggest names were expected to play almost every game and carry heavy physical burdens without the extensive recovery resources available today. To Jordan and others who share this view, the modern approach reflects a shift away from the relentless
King LeBron James. Number 2, I'm going with rest in peace, Kobe Bean Bryant. And number 1, the greatest player of all time is Michael Jordan.
Michael Jordan set a standard for durability by playing all 82 games in 9 separate seasons, while Kobe Bryant became famous for, often associated with LeBron James and his supporters, are more willing to rest when dealing with soreness or minor issues, a practice commonly linked to modern load management strategies. This context made Shaquille O'Neal's power moves ranking on Netflix earlier in the year especially controversial. When asked to list his top 10 players of all time, Shaq placed Jordan at number 1 and Bryant at number 2, signaling his admiration for their competitiveness and toughness. LeBron, meanwhile, was positioned at number 3, a placement that sparked widespread debate among fans and analysts about legacy, era differences, and what qualities matter most in defining greatness.
I didn't think players really feared LeBron like they did Jordan.
I've never really heard any players say they fear.
Shaquille O'Neal explained his reasoning in simple terms. For him, greatness comes down to killer instinct. Opponents regardless of physical punishment. But Shaq is not alone in pushing back against modern narratives. Paul Pierce also strongly criticized LeBron James's argument that today's game is harder because of its speed, openly dismissing the idea rather than offering mild disagreement. According to this perspective, the tension between eras goes deeper than any single podcast comment. For many former players who helped build the league's identity, they believe something intangible is missing, the fear factor. Shaq repeatedly argued throughout 2025 and 2026 that while LeBron commands respect for his statistics, Shaq's ranking, placing Jordan first, Bryant second, and LeBron third, reflected his belief that in a must-score situation, the most ruthless competitors would be his top choices. Supporters of this viewpoint often reference physically brutal matchups from past decades, such as the late 1980s clashes between the Detroit Pistons and Chicago Bulls, where defenders like Bill Laimbeer, Rick Mahorn, and Charles Oakley used heavy contact to wear down stars. Legends such as Larry Bird routinely endured that physical style and still returned the next game ready to compete. Under today's rules, many of those plays would likely result in ejections or suspensions, highlighting how much officiating standards have changed. Ultimately, the debate reflects two different definitions of toughness. One side values physical intimidation and relentless competitiveness, while the other emphasizes skill evolution, speed, longevity, and professionalism. When LeBron later commented that calf injuries have become a modern equivalent to high ankle sprains, critics saw it as further proof of how training, injury management, and medical awareness have reshaped the sport. Whether viewed as progress or softness, the contrast underscores how dramatically the NBA's culture and style of play have evolved across generations.
To the league, Reese, some of the biggest concerns of injuries was like, a high ankle sprain. You was afraid to step on somebody's ankle because there was 4 or 5 guys sitting in the paint. because it was 4 or 5 guys sitting in the paint. And if you land on somebody's ankle, you get a high ankle sprain, you out 4 to 6 weeks. Now, that's not really much of you don't really see that as much now because the game is so spread open, it's so much pace. But now you see the new high ankle sprain.
Shaquille O'Neal explained his reasoning in simple terms. For him, he argued that the modern claim about speed making minor injuries feel equivalent to the brutal hits of the 1990s made little sense to players who actually lived through that era. Shaquille O'Neal, who spent years battling constant physical contact in the paint, reportedly found the comparison especially frustrating. Supporters of the older generation often point to moments like the 1988 NBA Finals, when Isaiah Thomas of the Detroit Pistons played through a severely sprained ankle, so swollen it was visibly distorted, and still scored 25 points in a single quarter against the Los Angeles Lakers. To them, that performance symbolizes a level of pain tolerance and competitiveness that defined the era. By contrast, critics say modern stars, including LeBron James, benefit from scheduled rests, advanced treatment, and unprecedented salaries, which they argue changes the definition of hardship in today's game. The debate also extends to how past players are sometimes portrayed as slow or out of shape. Former big men reject that idea outright, noting that dominant centers of the 1980s and 1990s combined size, strength, and surprising mobility. Legends such as Hakeem Olajuwon, David Robinson, and a young O'Neal himself were elite athletes who could sprint the floor, protect the rim, and anchor entire defenses. To many veterans, describing that generation as sluggish is a misunderstanding of how physically demanding interior play once was. This perspective resurfaced when O'Neal was asked by NBC News to name his dream all-time starting 5. His selections, Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Karl Malone, Larry Bird, and Hakeem Olajuwon, reflected his preference for players known not only for skill, but also for toughness, durability.
So if you had to do your all-time NBA starting 5, do you have one?
Kobe and Mike.
Okay.
That's the 1 and the 2. The 3, I got to go with Bird.
Okay.
4, I got to go with Malone. And 5, I got to go with Hakeem.
You left somebody out.
No.
Shaquille O'Neal notably left LeBron James off his all-time dream team entirely and even excluded himself, underscoring how seriously he approached the selection. When asked directly about LeBron, Shaq reportedly showed little reaction, suggesting that if he were building a team to win championships, he would prioritize players fully focused on competition rather than media ventures or defensive rules limit physical contact. Drawing on his own experience in the 2000s, he said players then had to fight through hard screens and maintain tight coverage rather than simply switching assignments. According to him, modern switching defenses can reduce the physical toll on defenders, whereas earlier eras demanded constant body-to-body battles. He also referenced enforcers such as Ben Wallace and Kevin Garnett as examples of players who made driving to the basket a punishing experience, emphasizing that every possession carried a physical cost. The criticism is also shaped by history between Pierce and LeBron, particularly their intense playoff rivalry when Pierce's Boston Celtics faced LeBron's Cleveland Cavaliers in the 2008 postseason. That series, highlighted by both players scoring 40-plus points in Game 7, remains one of the defining battles of that era. From Pierce's perspective, modern defensive schemes such as frequent switching can make life easier for stars compared with the older approach, where defenders were expected to stay attached to their matchup and fight through screens. While analysts differ on whether today's game is truly softer or simply more strategic and skill-based, Pierce's comments reflect a broader generational debate.
Yeah, mentally
so many times I'm bruised up after the game. My shoulder hurts.
It's definitely more physical.
It's hurting.
So why were more guys playing 75 games a year then?
Because we was tougher. Well, now
Paul Pierce concluded his argument by saying that modern basketball has become too clean, claiming that today's stars can post massive statistics partly because traditional enforcers have disappeared from the game. He pointed out that players in the mold of Charles Oakley or Rick Mahorn, known for punishing physical defense, would struggle to stay on the court under current rules where excessive contact often leads to fouls, ejections, or suspensions. According to this viewpoint, rule changes have fundamentally altered how defense is played and how offenses generate numbers. attention intensified when the NBA announced its All-Star starters on January 29th, ending a streak of selections that had long included LeBron James. For more than 2 decades, his